So before we move on to the panel, there's one more detail that we need to do to match the rest of the units and the fire surround that we've made, which is everything has got a chamfer groove on it. That means a chamfer around the edges and also a chamfer in this joint here, which should be easier than it sounds. So here's a couple of test pieces here. So that's showing that same detail here, so that's completely flush. But what we are going to do, if you just come zoom in a bit, so I've just done a mock chamfer here. So each edge has got a little bevel on it, and you can see that's now got a nice chamfer detail which matches the other units. So we've got a trim router set up with our chamfer bit, and this is a bearing guided router bit, which means this bearing rides along the bit so you can control. It will never go further than that edge of the workpiece that's resting on. So you can increase the height of it, which just means the bearing drops a bit further down the workpiece to get more of a chamfer. So running it around here, very easy. The problem we have is for the cross pieces that we've got, where we've got this tenon, if we look here now, this bearing cannot touch the edge of that workpiece because the tenon's in the way. Obviously the bearing actually needs to be touching this, but that's obviously too high. So that means we're going to have to do another round of this in the coping sled. So we'll set up a chamfer bit without a bearing, and I'll basically run this through the router table. So we've now got a 45-degree router bit in there. So now I'm going to run that through on the end, and I'll show you how it looks after. So there you go. Now you can see the ever so slight, probably 1.5 to 2 mil chamfer on the end. So you can see the initial chamfer building up. So all we've actually done so far is the end of these pieces. We still now need to do the whole inside edge, which I'll do now with the trim router, and then I've also got the outside edge to do, but I'll actually wait till I've all finished gluing that up, because I'll probably sand the edges first and then I'll do the final bevels. So this stage is now complete. We've done the chamfer in the join and on the inside of all 8 drawers now. Smaller right side, wider left side. So next step is to do the panel, the inset panel. So if I show you what a shaker door would typically look like, do a piece of off-cut to apply here. If we look at that on the edge, you can see that we've got panel inset on both the front and the back, which is how a typical shaker door would look. But if we now assume that this is obviously a drawer front that will be attached to the drawer itself. So let's pretend this is the drawer. And if you see this now, you can see that we've got a void behind here. And to attach the drawer front to the drawer, this panel is quite thin and there's a void, and that's going to compress in when we screw it. So ideally, for a drawer front, we have a solid back, so the panel is flush to the back, but we still got that chamfer detail there. So we're going to test a cut for that now. Now to do that, we need to get the next measurement, which is how the measurement for this way of the panel, and obviously the length and the width of it. So what we know here is the inside edge gap here is, so we've got 196 mil, and then we just check our rebate that we've got here is 9 millimeters. So that means, and we'll have a slight shadow gap inside this panel, so we'll also have a 2 mil short. So that means we've got 196 plus 18, and then we'll reduce 2 mil to have a gap. So I think that's 212 millimeters. So we're now going to rip an offcut test piece of panel, and then we have to rebase the edges of it to fit into this. And I'm just going to show you looking end on before I take it to the router table. So now what we have to do Let's bring it to the edge so you can see a bit better. We now have to rebate this bit here on both sides. So basically going to take that out, so that this panel now slots in. So we're ready at the router table to go now. As you can see that, you can see how little where I marked it there. That is going to take off and rebate that. So we've got to do one pass for the other side and then we'll flip it around and do that way. So here's the test result. So you can see we've now got a nice rebate on each edge. So we're going to go test fit that in the rails and stiles. So we're now back testing it. So I should be able to nicely slot this in. Obviously this is not long enough. And obviously I need to also do the each ends as well. But this will give us a good enough idea. So, as you can see, this is the desired effect for the back. So we've got a nice little shadow gap detail here. It's not really necessary, but we've done it anyway, so it looks nicer. So this is flush, so this is easy to screw to the drawer. And then if we flip, let's hold this together, flip round. We've now got, oh, actually done this back to front as well, because obviously this chamfer needs to be on the front, but now you can see how it's nicely rebated on the front. And that's perfect fit, so we're happy with that now. So I won't show you the same process again, but next step is now obviously to work out what length to cut these to, so we can do the same thing, cut it to length, and then we'll rebate the ends of these. So I've got 8 of these already pre-cut, roughly to size. So now we're happy with that 212 millimeters. I think this is about, what is this? So this is 310 millimeters. So now we can rip this down to 212, which I'll do at the table. So now do that times 8, and then we're ready to work out what the overall length needs to be. Okay, so we've now got a panel ripped down to 212 millimeters. So I've now going to make one pass on this edge, pass on the other side, and we'll repeat that for the other 8 panels. We're at the next stage, which is glue up. So I've got parallel clamps out, which will make this job nice and easy. Regular PVA glue, doesn't need to be an outdoor resist one, so just a standard PVA glue is fine for this. You can get slower setting glues if you're doing a longer glue up, because you really only get 5-10 minutes before it starts to tack. And this only needs to be in the clamp for about 30-45 minutes, so you do need to be quick, but this glue will be fine for this job. If you're on shaker doors, if it is a natural timber, typically you don't actually glue the panel in, because it needs to move a bit, but because this is MDF, it's very stable. We can glue the entire thing, which will make it a lot more solid. So start by a bead of glue in all the grooves, and then we'll brush on some glue on the tenon joins, and then get going. And if you don't have one of these are quite useful, which is a silicone brush set, which means once the glue dries, you can just peel it off the silicone because it's non-stick, so you can reuse the brushes. So here, I'm just going to brush on to the tenons. The sides of this one on here. And this is obviously the key joint. This is what really needs to be glued. So start by, because obviously you've got a panel to slot in. So we'll just initially set that one. Slot that in. And then we'll now glue up this tenon. So hopefully I'm sure if people were watching this video, they'd be like, you've left your glue pot under.
have spotted this mistake actually.
Obviously we chamfered one side of this, and actually just put that in the wrong edge. So just cleaning a bit of the excess glue. I haven't worried too much about, if this was solid timber, probably be a lot more careful about glue spreading out, because when glue spreads out it sinks into the timber, which means you can have issues when you come to stain natural timbers. But as this is going to be painted, it's not a concern. And the glue actually does nicely help set where we put a groove in here. That has a slightly more raw MDF edge, so this glue is actually nicely setting that to make it easier to paint. So, glued up, I've just tightened the clamps up now. Very small squares to check our angles are nice, which they are. These are all nice and flush, these are tight. So leave that set for an hour and then move on to the next 6 to go.